Now that we know how to tune and hold our guitar in our playing position, we can learn our first 4 chords. Before you start, you want to make sure to tune your guitar. Most basic chords use 4 or less fingers to sound the chord. Those 4 fingers are labeled 1 through 4. The first finger is the index finger. The second finger, the middle finger. The third finger, the ring finger. And the fourth finger, the pinky finger. In order to learn our guitar chords, we first have to know how to read a chord diagram. On the diagram, there's 6 vertical lines. These lines represent the 6 strings of the guitar. The vertical line on the far left would represent our lowest E string. The vertical line on the far right would represent our highest E string. From left to right, the vertical lines would be the lowest E string, the A string, the D string, the G string, the B string, and then on the far right, we have our highest E string. On the diagram, we also have horizontal lines. The thin horizontal lines represent our fret wires, while the thickest horizontal line that is located at the top of our diagram represents the nut. The spaces in between the horizontal lines would represent our frets. Often, above a chord diagram, there will be circles or X's. The circles indicate when we are supposed to play a string open or without any fingers fretting that string. The X's above the vertical string lines would indicate when we are not supposed to play that string. Found within the diagram, there are several circles with numbers inside of them. The circles represent where we are supposed to place our fingers on the strings. The numbers inside of those circles tell us a recommendation of which finger we are supposed to play on that string. As we see on our G chord diagram, that on the lowest E string, which would be the furthest left string, we play the 3rd fret of the E string with our 2nd finger, our middle finger. On the A string, the 2nd fret, we play that with our 1st finger. As you see, there's 2 circles at the top of our diagram. Those circles are hovering over our D string and our G string. This means that we are to play those strings open, without any fingers fretting the strings. On the B string, the 3rd fret, we are playing that with our 3rd finger, the ring finger. On the highest E string on the far right of our diagram, we are playing the 3rd fret with our 4th finger, the pinky finger. When playing chords, there are 3 things to remember. The first is, whenever you can, set fingers in the sweet spot of the fret. The sweet spot of the fret is about the 3/4 mark of the fret. A way to remember that is in between the middle point of the fret and the fret wire itself. When fretting the guitar, we want to make sure that our fingers stay in an upright, vertical position. This helps make sure that we don't accidentally mute one of the other strings with our fretting finger. The third thing to remember is to try to keep your left hand thumb or your fretting hand thumb behind the neck. This helps keep our fingers upright. While there are some uses for curling the thumb around the neck, when we're beginning, we want to try to avoid this so that we can practice good technique from the start. If one of your strings is buzzing or muting, you want to make sure to check a few things. You want to make sure that your fingers are pressing down the strings firmly. If they are not, this can create muting or buzzing. Also, you want to make sure that your fingers stay upright on the strings. This helps avoid the fingers accidentally touching another string. Lastly, you want to look at your picking hand, or if you're right-handed, your right hand. Once you pick through the chord, make sure that your right hand is not touching any of the strings, because if it is, it can cause muting. The second chord we're going to be working on is called the C chord. Well, technically this would be called a C add 9 chord, but in most situations, it works in place of a C, and it sounds better. Look at the top left of the diagram. You see an X above the E string. This means that we do not want to play that E string, or we do not want to pick it with our right hand. On our A string, our second finger would be pressed down at the 3rd fret. On the D string, our first finger would press down the 2nd fret. We have another circle on top of the G string. This would indicate that we play that G string open, or without any fingers fretting that string. On the B string, we have once again our 3rd finger pressing down on the 3rd fret. On the highest E string, we have our 4th finger pressing down the 3rd fret. As you can see, this chord is very similar to our G chord. Our 3rd finger and our 4th finger would be considered anchor fingers. An anchor finger is a finger that is pressed down in the same spot as another chord. Once again, on our C chord, we want to avoid playing the lowest E string. Now, if you accidentally hit it, it's not the end of the world. For our D chord, we have 2 X's above the strings. Those strings are the lowest E string and the A string. We don't want to sound those strings with our picking hand. There's a circle above the D string, which means we are to play that string open or without any fingers fretting the string. The first finger is fretting the 2nd fret of the G string. The 3rd finger is fretting the 3rd fret of the B string. This finger would be an anchor finger for both our C chord and our G chord. On our highest E string, we have our 2nd finger fretting the 2nd fret. Once again, try not to sound the lowest E or the A string. Now, again, if you hit one of them, it's not the end of the world. Our last chord that we're going to learn today is by far the easiest. It's called the E minor chord. You play the E minor chord using a lot of open strings, which is why it's one of the easier ones. The lowest E string is open, indicated by the circle above the string. We fret the 2nd fret of the A string with our first finger. We fret the 2nd fret of the D string with our 2nd finger. Every other string is open, indicated by the circles above the lines. When you're first learning the guitar, your fingers may hurt a little bit as you practice, but the more you play, the more your fingers will toughen up and get used to fretting the strings. In turn, you'll be able to play longer the more you practice. You want to practice transitioning between each of these chords. Go from the G to the C chord, then from the C chord to the D chord, from the D chord to the E minor chord, and from the E minor chord back to the G chord. You can do this in whatever configuration you want. At first, practice very slowly. This will ensure that we learn the right technique right at the start, which will make us progress faster in the long run. These 4 chords have been used in countless songs. Now you have a basic understanding of the harmonic structure that makes up some of the most loved songs of our day. As always, keep playing and God bless.